Exclusive polling for us reveals Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. These strongholds held by Labour known as the Red Wall.
Well, the polling shows the Red Wall voting intention puts Reform on 34%, Labour on 27% and the Conservatives on 22%.
Now, the other question asked in the poll was who would make the best Prime Minister? And the answer was?
Nigel Farage. He appears to lead on 27% compared to Sir Keir Starmer, who comes in at second place with 24%.
Even worse news for the Conservatives. Kemi Badenoch is below Jeremy Corbyn in terms of popularity. So cutting welfare also appeared to be the most popular way of funding public services.
Well, 7 in 10 Red Wall voters also want the winter fuel allowance to be reinstated for all pensioners.
Well, here in the studio, Oscar Reddrop. Oscar was a former Conservative advisor. He joins us in the studio. So if you were advising today, my friend, what would that advice be to Kemi Badenoch?
Well, it's a really, really tough, hard-hitting poll for the Conservatives. I mean, it's a really tough and hard-hitting poll for the Prime Minister. In terms of number 10, that would strike absolute fear into my soul. From Kemi's perspective, I mean, look, there is still, and admittedly, as each week and month goes by, this message from me probably grows a little bit out of date, but we are still so far away from a general election. I mean, you forget, in Hartlepool 2021, after Boris won that by-election, Keir Starmer was on the verge of resigning. He took counsel from very close advisors, and yet, 3-4 years later, he takes that huge sweeping majority in 2024 home. So there's still plenty of time for Kemi. Let's forget about Kemi just for a minute. Labour, we have a Labour government, we have Keir Starmer in the hot seat, and this, for me, shows that, yes, and we've seen in after those local election results, particularly on issues like immigration, he has kind of cosplayed, if you like, a Reform Prime Minister. He has tried to park tanks on their lawn. But the message here is authenticity. He can focus group and, follow polls like this. Keir Starmer will see this poll today and his advisors. And they'll probably and ah, and they'll think, all right, God, how do we park those tanks again on Reform laws? How do we disarm the Reform sensibility and vote that's out there? And he can't. He's always kind of a couple of steps behind it. Reform and Nigel Farage have an innate, at the moment, gift almost to know what the Red Wall and other huge parts of the country need and want. Keir Starmer poll group, focus groups it, and he's just 2 steps behind, and people don't believe it. It's authenticity, I think, a poll like this shows more than anything else is winning at the moment.
And that's so interesting that you mentioned authenticity, because that's one thing that struck me yesterday listening to Nigel Farage, his words about Angela Rayner, saying, well, actually, she's the best of a bad bunch to him because at least she's authentic, at least you know what she stands for, whereas he was implying that Keir Starmer, you don't know, and he doesn't understand working people. Do you think this is the end of left and right politics? Because what we heard from Nigel Farage yesterday was a little bit of both.
Culturally, on cultural issues and things like law and order and defence, Reform and Farage are certainly to the right, and I think that's kind of where the public's at. But in terms of public spending and those kind of issues and the family, he made a big play on that yesterday. He's parking his tanks on the left lawn. I mean, my old boss Boris, that's something he did very successfully in 2019, and it's something that Farage is repeating again. In terms of that authenticity point, and he made a comment like that about Angela Rayner, kind of game recognise game, real recognise real. And the thing with Starmer that will be problematic for him here is he will watch someone like Farage, and I think he slightly hopes that. And I think that it's not just Starmer. It's the kind of Westminster. I wouldn't say GB News in fairness, but the media are getting wrong as well. They seem to think Farage is politically almost inexperienced, and this is going to blow up in his face at some point. Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage has been at this for decades. He has said the same things on the same issues for years and years now. So for Keir Starmer, mid-term, almost, well, not quite mid-term, but during his time as Prime Minister, to be kind of chopping and changing and flip-flopping and people not believing a word he says, he can't match that authenticity, that track record that Farage has.
And I know you're saying we're a long way from a general election, but actually 4 years in politics, as you know, is not a very long time. In terms of the structure of Reform UK, I mean, they don't have a shadow cabinet, do they? I mean, they're going to have to work very quickly if the polls are correct and he's going to be the next Prime Minister.
Yeah, they're going to have to muscle up hugely, which I think is probably their biggest challenge. And we've seen in terms of yesterday, and they are kind of teasing out more and more spending plans and policy, and the media and, you know, people in Westminster are taking him on that a bit. You know, I know he's, you know, talk in terms of how would you fund the winter fuel payments? How would you fund the benefit cap, the two-child benefit cap? And, you know, he's talking about DEI and net zero. And for some people, of course, they're very popular things probably to get rid of. But the cuts he'd make in those areas, there are a few people kind of saying, actually, you're not going to find the money there. And so reality and reform will collide with the harsh reality of responsibility in politics at some point. And they've got to be ready for it.
Oscar, thank you very much indeed.
We've had some polling done here at GB News. It's on the Red Wall and the Red Wall voting intention. It's not good news for Kemi Badenoch. She polls under Corbyn, just single figures in our poll. And also, the Conservatives are on just 22% in the Red Wall, according to this poll. Third place in the Red Wall. And there was a poll last week that put you at fourth place under the Lib Dems. Are you finished as a party?
So we need to listen to the message that we got at the last general election. In fact, that's exactly what we're doing. We know that people were not happy and were frustrated with some of the things that happened towards the tail end of our time in government, particularly, you know, after the pandemic and with the inflation we saw from the Ukraine war. And we know that we need to reflect on that, show that we're listening, and actually do the hard work on what is the right offer to the country come the next general election, which is still some 4 years out from now. And that's what people will want to hear from us. And we know that some of the challenges that face this country are, they're big ones. These are serious times. We need serious politicians coming up with serious solutions. And what Nigel Farage is coming up with is just something that might sound appealing, but actually it's not going to be the right answers that the country needs. And I understand one of the things that's going on is people are really disappointed with Labour. So they voted for Keir Starmer thinking that he had these nice promises and things were going to get better. And what they've seen is that he didn't do the hard yards in opposition. They didn't come up with the right policies. They didn't have a plan. Instead, we've got things like the chaos over the winter fuel allowance, all those payments being taken away from pensioners, and the jobs tax, which is terrible for businesses, which is driving unemployment, which is killing the economy and pushing down economic growth. So Labour's making a real mess of everything. And the thing that we need to be able to do is give people an alternative, so they don't think, oh, we'll go to Nigel Farage because he's got a whole load of promises and maybe that will be better, because he also is not doing the hard work that you need to do in a period of opposition to come up with the right policies to offer to the people so that there'll be a better future, because there aren't easy answers, but there are answers, and that's what we need to offer to the country.